I wanted to show you guys some mods I did to the RedCat RS10 XT rock crawler. I kind of have this thing about cables. I just hate to see a rat's nest. I see that a lot with really high-end crawlers, beautiful machines, $1,700 machines, and the wires just kind of like a big balled-up mess. Which is, I guess, whatever you like. But I like my cables to look purposeful and be protected. And this little servo cable is pretty skinny. So sheathing is probably not a terrible idea. Protect it a little bit as you sheath this, protect it from any kind of abrasion from here to here. Couldn't really sheath the whole thing, obviously, because it's got connectors. You don't want to do that. But I did sheath everything from the center one's the ESC, the gray one's the ESC, and then you got your two blue servo leads. You've got itty bitty little piece of red heat shrink over the fan. Those are very skinny wires too. Probably be real easy to tear them. That's about it, man. Now some other mods I did was I didn't like the way the suspension was acting. So I tried around with all these different suspension settings. I moved things back and forth. And what I was finding just from my rudimentary testing is that when you take this lower link and you put it to the most forward hole here, what it does is it kicks the whole front end like this, which makes it want to steer better when you're trying to climb up something, or so it seems. I'll have to play with it more, let you know. Ditto, if I move this one all the way forward, it kicks the back one, so again it's going to want to steer up and over things a little bit better. I moved these shock mounts about 1/8 of an inch this way and this way. And then I moved these shock mounts to their furthest outboard points. Not sure what that's going to do. These shocks are not the greatest. You're only going to get so much out of them. But what I didn't like was that you know, you've got two things going on with the suspension, more or less when it's at rest. You've got your total amount of droop, which is how far down it will hang, and what's keeping it from going any further is literally the shock bottoming out. So at this point the shock's bottoming out. And what I was having when I first got it out of the box is that if you picked it up and you put it there, it would just sit there. And now, I don't know if you can see, but I've got it to start drooping a little bit. And it's probably easier to see if I push it all the way down so it's totally flat. Okay. So when this thing is completely compressed, it's completely flat, and then when it comes up, you'll see that it doesn't come up all the way. See how much? So that was what I was trying to introduce. And how I did that was I clipped these springs. I don't have a box full of springs like some RC guys. I don't have a bunch of RC cars to mess with, so this is my only one. So what I did was I clipped one coil off of that, and because there's no other adjustment to these, you can't adjust these shocks. And as you can see, they still fit. They still are under tension, but there's just a little bit less spring load on them. And what I'm hoping is that that's going to give it that kind of drooping over things, like when it starts to climb up over things, it's going to stretch easier, because what makes this stretch is compressing the springs. So as you start to climb, if the whole thing is super tight, you never get stretched out. And if you're never stretched out, you never lower your center of gravity. You want, when you start climbing, pulling yourself up. And one way to check on that without going outside in the 20-degree weather and climbing is to literally just lift it up and see how much it straightens out. And then put it down and see how much you've got out of it. Not very much. I think I need a lot softer springs. See, if I cut any more coils off the springs, then they'll be loose and sloppy. They're not going to push against the cups, and then that'll be a problem. But if they were softer, the whole action would just be better. Thicker shock oil, I think, is definitely necessary. They need more damping. The reason I want more damping is so that this thing doesn't just droop automatically. First of all, I want more sag. Sag is just the weight of the vehicle. I want it to come down a little more. The only way I'm going to get that was with softer springs. And then with the thicker shock oil, what you get is when you lift up one side, it kind of wants to lift the other one a little bit too, which is good sometimes to get over things. You don't necessarily want this thing to be as limp as a noodle. You want it to be cushy, and you want it to be able to stretch. See, right now, when I start dragging this thing, it barely wants to stretch because I'm fighting against these rather strong springs. Try and drag it. See, it doesn't want to extend. These are really strong. One way you can quickly check something like this out without having to cut anything is you just take the cups off, right? Take these cups off real quick, okay? Yeah, that shouldn't be too hard to do. I can get them off. There we go. All right. Now that you see, this is what you would get with a real slinky, super soft suspension. Is you're still going to get plenty of articulation, but when you start to drag it, see how it straightens out. But what you don't have is it bunching itself back up again. That's the problem. So it's a balancing act between too soft of a spring. This would just be ridiculous. Okay. Alright. And a little bit stiffer spring. And it's right in between that point. And I don't want to clip these springs anymore. So I already took, a little bit off of them. But as you can see, with the spring fully extended, when this thing is all the way out, see, it's still going to rest on the cup. Just a tiny bit of tension. If I took another coil off of it, it wouldn't. But what I'm looking for is more, just like that, when you see that, where it cushions down, and then you want it to spring back up. So, still dialing it, still working with it, but did want to show off my cable management and my little mod to the shocks and the fact that I changed a few little things around just to try it. But I do like it. I do like this machine. It's a fun little machine to tinker with. Spent many hours today playing with it. Alright guys, well, y'all have a good night. Thanks for watching.